Sieht gut aus. Nice. Wir sind live.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Anna. I'm from Q-Summit, and we're really happy to welcome you tonight. And yeah, excited about our talk tonight, our panel discussion with three really interesting founders.
So hi
and
everyone.
Yeah, I wish you a great evening, and we continue with Leo.
Yeah, I'm Leo. I'm from thinc. And we are from the two biggest initiatives for startup entrepreneurship from University of Mannheim. And we're really happy to host this event tonight. If you have questions, we would do it today that you just post them in the end, and we will answer them then in the end. So the three founders will answer your questions. And right now, I would just say we get the three online and enjoy the evening.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, I want to say that it's an honor to be invited to the panel talk and having Eliran and Manoj with us on board. Thank you so for thinc and Q-Summit for making this happening, and especially for Anna and Leo and their teams to hosting this event. Before introducing us, I would like to state that it is more than ever important in these days that young professionals and students are coming together, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about how to collaborate between Germany and Israel. And these are my pre-words to our conversation today. So let me start with a short introduction. Eliran and Manoj, go ahead.
Okay,
and
so
over to you.
Okay, so let's start with me. So as Jennifer said before, my name is Eliran. I'm from Israel, and if I can say something about myself is from youth age, I search for creative ways to overcome problems, and I believe this is the passion that drives me to become an entrepreneur.
Manoj, do you want to have a few words on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm Manoj. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I think I've been building companies for the last nearly 10 years, even during university. I think there's a lot of students in the room or in the live studio. So yeah, enjoyed building startups already back then. Had a few successes, or others did while I was supporting them. And today I'm allowed to build my own. So over the last years, built a few successful ones, especially in the German-speaking world. Founder and managing director of join.com. So really looking forward to the session and the questions.
Great. And I just want to say a few words about myself. So I'm Jennifer. I'm not from the HR industry in comparison to our other two invited guests, Eliran and Manoj. But I do found a startup. It's a German-Israeli startup called Atit, which is Hebrew and means future. And we want to develop the future of presentations by creating a software that self-generates presentations. So I'm going to guide you through it and give you insights about my experience in Israel and in Germany. And the setting for today is that we will talk about HR industry as such, about startups, the ecosystem of startups, but then also building the bridge between Germany and Israel. So those things to say, and let's start with going into the topic by discussing how we got into the startup ecosystem, how we became entrepreneurs. And I would like to ask the first question to Manoj directly. What was your first job? How did you get your first job?
Oh my God. Okay. So I need to make sure that everybody knows I'm fully on improv, and I haven't thought about these things at all. But actually, my first job was a disaster. It has a lot to do with potentially why I studied in the end. And actually, my first job, that was the question, right? Was when I grew up in England and Switzerland. I'm more Swiss than I am English these days. And in Switzerland, I had a neighbor when I think it was 15. He had it was a factory for metal stuff. I don't know the word for it. And when I got there, I wanted to do 2 weeks of working to earn a bit of pocket money, because my parents, they were able to look after me and finance me, but I was always told you need to work hard to make a great living. And what I did was I went to this factory on day one, and I was good at maths and things like that, and I never did any hard work. And what I had to do was, you all know supermarkets, right? There's the baskets, and those baskets are in these little square metal boxes that have wheels on them, so they go around. And what I was asked to do, literally, for every single day, the whole day, was to screw on the 4 wheels onto these little carts. So it's not a pushing shopping cart, it was the cart for the baskets. And I did it with as much energy as I could, but at the end of the day, I was super dead. I knew I was not made for manual labor. And at the same time, I definitely knew why my parents and my grandparents had all studied, and I was definitely going to study business after that. So that was my first job. I learned a lot, great people, different characters than I met later in my schooling, but it was definitely a great experience. How to work hard, I think.
Thanks. Maybe your next startup can be like a robotics for making a solution for this pain.
Yeah, for sure.
Eliran, tell me about you. What was your first job? How you got your first job?
Okay, so my first job was at 13 years old. I played chess, simultaneous game with 30 players, because before that I was an Israeli chess champion, so it was my first job.
Well, that's definitely the opposite of what Manoj was doing. In fact, my journey, how I became an entrepreneur was, I really didn't know what I like. I was doing internships in architecture. I was giving horse riding lessons. I was doing lots of jobs in many various fields, even in banking and stuff, and as a politician. But I got into entrepreneurship because I really wanted to change something, and that was a passion I had. So maybe Eliran and Manoj, what was your journey of becoming an entrepreneur? How did you get into founding something?
Okay, Manoj?
Oh, Eliran, you go ahead.
No. Okay, so I will start. So while studying my MBA at Ariel University, I, like most all the students, search for job, and I could not believe it will take me more than 6 months just to find a job interview at Intel that, by the way, I passed within 30 minutes. From this point, I started to think to myself how I can help people that suffered as I suffered in this point. Yeah, so from this stage, I started to think about it.
Thank you.
So over to me, I guess. I think, how did we get into entrepreneurship? I think for me, it was really interesting. I come from university. I shouldn't say it in this channel, but I will anyway. I studied at the University of St. Gallen, which is also in the German-speaking world, like Mannheim and I guess a lot of the audience, right? Coming from that kind of university, I had a lot of exposure to large corporates, consulting companies, etc. I had my internships and went through all the case studies of McKinsey and BCG and so on. But at the same time, I heard from so many people that they hated being a number and being able to have some impact, not only at a company, potentially on other things as well. So I sort of actually built a startup during university. I was one of the junior, I would say, employees, even though there were only 6 people. We were building a platform for nightlife. and vent. So the company is called, anybody who speaks Swiss German in the audience would understand it, it's called Ausgang.ch, which is basically clubbing.ch, the Swiss acronym at the end. And while building that, it was super exciting for me because I was in my second or third year at university, but I built a team of 25 people, photographers, because they were documenting all these events for me, and none of them were paid. So it was really difficult to motivate them. And during that time, we built it, a lot of revenues, etc. And I was earning a couple of €100 for 30 hours of work every week. And then the company was sold to Axel Springer, the largest media house in Europe, I think. And the founders all earned a little bit of money. And I realized for the first time, holy shit, entrepreneurship is actually a real job. And for the first time, I thought, I think it needs to be my job and my calling. So that's how I got into entrepreneurship.
Thanks for sharing with us. So for me, actually, running to Israel and moving to Israel made the change, because in Germany, and we will talk about the ecosystem in a bit, for me, it was always, you go to university, you study something nice, and in my case, it was philosophy, politics, and economics, also at the University of Mannheim. And then your dream job is to become a consultant, earn a lot of money. And I never felt that I fit into this process. And in Israel, in the ecosystem, I realized that you can do things differently. And the vibe in the ecosystem is really nice and integrative, something I haven't found in Germany yet. And first, I was just a consultant and for startups. That was my first take, because I felt like I'm not ready to found yet. And probably that's something that a lot of females have. And by having the idea and going through the process of building a pitch deck and, become part of an accelerator program as well, which maybe for your first founding is a nice setting to have, that made me become an entrepreneur, and also seeing myself as an entrepreneur, defining new ways. And just a short note, actually, Eliran and I met during this accelerator program, which was 6 months, lasting from February until August. And that's also how he always told me about the HR and recruiting industry in Israel. So let's move forward, and I have a short question for you. No, like one question, but you should answer it in one sentence. How would you describe the recruiting industry in one sentence, Manoj? The recruiting industry in Germany.
Let me think. The recruiting industry in Germany. Well, until COVID, it was definitely a war for talent. During COVID, I think it's being able to find the right talent amongst a lot of applications, with a lot of people flooding into the market. That was maybe a short example of what it could be today.
Thanks. Eliran, how would it look like in Israel?
In one sentence, all the hiring process.
In one sentence.
In one sentence.
The recruiting market.
Yeah, so if I can summarize it in one sentence, so it's a long and inefficient process.
Indeed. A fun fact to that is that I got my first job in Israel through Facebook. There was a Facebook annonce, and they were looking for a business developer, and then I just went there to a random office, and I introduced myself, and so I got the job. But definitely in Israel it's less structured than in Germany, and we will see how this changes, so what your startups are doing to change that. So for me, it would be interesting to hear more about the problem you identified in the market and what solutions you're offering with the startup you're founding. And if you like, Manoj, you can start.
So to keep it short, I think there's obviously there's a huge amount of things that are in it on take Eliran's word. Sorry about that. On the candidate side as well as on the company side, right? We feel that at the end of the day, if you think about it, right, the job description from the company side is a relic from the past. Our parents and maybe our parents' parents probably had job descriptions. At the same time, the CV is also feels like a relic from the past, because the same thing also back then. CVs were maybe printouts, but they were also pretty much just a description of what people were. But if they were perfect, both of them, or you had perfect information without any asymmetry, potentially you wouldn't need the whole interview process, right? But that's sort of the issue. End game. I'm pretty sure all of us would just like to find the perfect company, and the perfect hire should be found by those companies. So I think that's essentially a fundamental issue in the world, and I don't think anybody's going to solve that tomorrow. What we found, though, and it's actually way more difficult for us to identify in this group of people on the call and watching, is that actually most companies are small companies. Most companies don't struggle with a massive talent or the options and the need to filter through a massive amount of candidates. Most companies really don't have any candidates at all. So if you think about, for example, Germany's economy, they call it, I think even in English, you say the Mittelstand. But even if you think about the Mittelstand, sort of the medium companies, the large part of the economy are small, small and medium companies. And those companies struggle because they're in the middle of nowhere in Germany. Maybe they're in Mannheim, but wherever they are, right? It's not Berlin, and it's not Hamburg, and it's not Munich. So you have less companies and you're less attractive for great talent to move there. And so based on that, one of the main pillars of our business model is that we're building a talent attraction software for small and medium businesses with a focus of small. And that's 24 million of those exist in Europe. You have to tell me, Eliran, how many exist in Israel, because maybe you can help us with the expansion someday. But that's essentially the problem for 24 million small and medium businesses that the large part aren't in great, cool cities, don't have any talent. So we're the talent attraction software for small and medium businesses across Europe. That's sort of what we do and why we're doing it.
Thanks for the take. Eliran, we heard your passion, what made you passionate, your personal journey of finding a job, but what was the problem that actually triggered you to build a startup and that you decided that's the way to go all in?
So first of all, I want to agree with Manoj, and all the resumes are not relevant these days, and they are making only problems. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that we want to give everyone the same chance, same opportunity to introduce themselves. It was, the problem that I suffered from, and I want to help people to overcome it. So what we are doing, we are giving people a chance to open their own profiles and to go through an automatic interview in our system. And from the other side, the recruiters not have to suffer from a lot of resumes in their mails, so it's a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm. So I understood that, your specific target group, Manoj, are small and medium-sized enterprises. It's a business model you're basing on. From a job seeker perspective, what would be the benefit? I mean, I guess that the audience also doesn't want to move to, we call it in South German, Hinterdupfingen, I guess.
I lost connection. Maybe
I was asking Manoj for the benefit of the job seekers in his company.
Yeah, so I think it's quite simple. There's a similarity in both sides. if you think about it, right, how do you find the perfect opportunity, and how do you find the perfect candidate? It's at the end of the day, it's not knowing where to look for it, right? So if you think about it, it's like now as well. It's really difficult to talk to the three of you, knowing that there's a lot of people potentially watching, right? But you need to know your audience. And I think it's all about the audience. And if you think about, okay, where do you guys search, right? Probably on LinkedIn, possibly a few other platforms where you would look at jobs. Now, there's the company you said Hintertupfingen, don't even know if that's really I'm Swiss, so I don't know if that's actually a city, but it's one that usually is used as an example for the middle of nowhere. But basically, even if you have a great position there, maybe it's the perfect position, regardless of the city, right? They may not know that you're on LinkedIn, because in Germany, there's a platform called Xing, right? That Eliran, you probably have heard of it, maybe. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's very German region specific. So potentially the great candidate who's living in Berlin wouldn't ever look at Xing, but the company might actually post their position on Xing. So how is it better what we do? One of the topics that we do is, we call it, we have a mini multi-posting suite for our clients. So as a talent attraction software, imagine it a little bit like Instagram, a little bit. So if you post on Instagram, you can also click whether it blasts onto Facebook. And I think Twitter, maybe they integrate more platforms soon. So when you use our software as a service, as a client, they can post these jobs on multiple platforms. So as a seeker, regardless of where you are, on which channel, you'll be able to find the most relevant positions to you. I hope that answered the question.
Sure, thank you. And maybe Eliran, can you describe a bit better how your solution works and how the job seeker is matching anonymously to the right job?
Yeah, so we integrated with the Facebook platform, and we're using the chatbot that the job seeker can fill their profile anonymously, and then they will get an offers based on only their professional skills. If they will accept it, they will have to answer the interview questions, the screening interview questions. By doing so, we are giving them the same opportunity to all the job seekers, and I think it's something revolutionized.
Yes. When first talking to Eliran about his startup, I was like, oh my God, in Germany, nobody would ever look for jobs at Facebook. That's something that is like out of the space, and Facebook is among young professionals also decreasing. But in Israel, people actually get their news from Facebook, and it's a really big thing there. And I found that really interesting when being there, that, you know, not one solution fits all countries. And it's something that, especially entrepreneurs, when we want to do business development, we have to keep it in mind.
Jennifer, by the way, you are not the only one that told me about it. Everyone told me it is impossible. No one will search for job on Facebook, and today it works.
Yeah, Eliran did have the chance, the huge opportunity with COVID, but let's talk about it later. And now move on a little bit stronger at discussing your personal startup and your corporate culture. So I would love to hear, Eliran, how you are hiring new staff.
So till today, we never hire no one. We believe in we believe in partners. So each one that we see him as a potential employee, we actually offer him or her to join our team. And I think it's something that we are doing correctly, because when someone is a real partner of us and not just an employee, so he gives us or her more than 100%. And so we never hired no one.
So people approached you and you evaluated whether the person is a fit for you, and if not, after a test period, you...
Yes, exactly. And I have to say that all the people that works with us, they came from our platform. So as I continue as what you said before regarding the Facebook platform, so all our partners and employees came from there.
Okay, interesting. Manoj, what about you? How are you looking for new stuff? What does the process look like? Are you looking for internships as well, or
Yeah, good question. I think, I mean, relevant for the audience again, I guess. But how do we look for new stuff? I think at the end of the day, big picture and then what we do. I think there will always be space for different tools. I think it depends on what position, what geography, what hierarchy, what function you're looking for, and maybe a number of other attributes, right? So I do think what we do as a tool is something that we use internally for sure. So we have a massive intake of applicants. At the same time, we're still a super early stage startup, even though we're one of the fastest growing HR techs in Europe, based on the amount of clients using us. We're still a small company of about 30 FTEs. So it's extremely important for me, having built multiple companies. It's not just about what you see on a CV and what people say in an interview. They're going to say they work hard. Everybody's going to say they're extremely intelligent. Everybody's going to say that they're going to add value. So it's really important for me to have referrals as well at this stage internally. I think until we're 50, maybe even 100 people, it might even be the most important task for me and my co-founder. We're two co-founders. And based on that, for the whole team, because we just want to work with great people. So not only the skills, it's the motivation. I think it's also based on that, it's what that means in tasks. And right now, there are so many important tasks that fundamentally things that I do will be done by an intern, right? Will be done by a head of, will be done by a senior manager. So it's essentially everybody's doing founder tasks. So I don't think there's only maybe on the contract, there's the word internship at our company, because anybody who comes in will be doing highly valuable, highly impactful stuff. And I like to say that we're not at all ageists. So it doesn't mean that because you had 5 or 10 years experience in some area that you're becoming the person who will own that topic. It's because you're the best for the job. And because we're doing something that nobody has done before in an industry that didn't exist the way we're attacking it, in a segment of the market, these small companies that no HR tech is solving in Western Europe for sure, maybe even the whole of Europe, everybody is new to the topic. So there's potentially no such thing as a lot of experience in what we're doing. So we love hiring from top universities. And one of the reasons I love being invited to this is because I think there are a lot of great people potentially looking for a great startup being built from the German-speaking world, maybe also from Israel. So I think that's how we hire. Great skills, great ambition, great culture. I think it's really important for high integrity at a company as well.
So for me, it would be really interesting, since you both are, the industry experts in recruiting in HR, how far skill set have changed, maybe also because of COVID. So, what does the modern skill set look like? And then maybe also how it differs in your startup. Like what are you looking for, and what are the characteristics of people that should look into startups?
Eliran, maybe after you.
Don't fight for it.
I'm thinking I can also.
Okay, so COVID really changed the game. Okay, and I think because everything now is online. So first of all, social media marketing became much more important. in addition, the personal skills, and because now you should convince customers and speak with many people online and without any physical meetings. So if I can, say something about professional skills, the chance. So it's social media in terms of marketing and personal skills.
Mm-hmm. And does it differ? What do you think to the industry and the market in Israel? What the market is looking for in terms of skill set?
It is hard for me to say, but in Israel, I feel that, there are many jobs in the low tech, drivers and in the supermarket, many people are needed, Wolt, you've been in Israel,
Yes.
so yeah.
I mean, there's a fun fact. I don't know if we can say it here, but when there was the first lockdown, Jolt, it's like Uber delivery in Israel. They expanded and grew, and funnily, also the people who were dealing with drugs suddenly wore costumes like Jolt. So the police started checking who is actually an employee of Jolt, and sometimes people combine these two jobs, but that's like just a fun joke. It's not a skill set, I guess, in the industries we are working on to wear customs. Let's move and make it more serious to Germany. So what do you think, what is the future job market looking for? And what about like your startup? Like what would be 3 topics every candidate should have who wants to work in a startup?
So you mean attributes, characteristics kind of thing?
I mean, it's also something interpersonal. When you talk to a candidate, there's always this yes or no from the first minute, I guess, for seconds.
Well, okay,
but,
so it's difficult during COVID, but I like to say every candidate needs to pass the beer test. Now, I don't like beer, I like gin, but that's a different story for another day. But basically, I think what I mean with that is every single person who comes to our company, you should be able to be happy to go out with them for a beer, have a conversation about anything, and be open to different mindsets and views. So I think that's extremely important, because if you're only working side by side and you never know about your colleagues, and or you don't care why somebody's working late in an evening, I think you're not building a culture where people want to help each other. And I think at a startup, everybody needs to help everybody, because nobody knows what they're doing at the beginning, right? And so I hope we are now organized chaos, where at the beginning, maybe we're a bit more chaos. So I think that's just generally what I think about anybody. Even if they're the best, perfect candidate on paper, they have the perfect answers in an interview, you can't imagine that beer test or gin test, happy to debate, then I don't think we should hire that person. That's the first thing. I think then when it comes to 3 skills, it's really difficult to nail it down. Well, for sure, it's motivation. Because I think when we started the company, right, it's just a couple of founders and a few people, close friends, close colleagues from the past that are starting on this journey. So we just have a crazy idea. So at the end of the day, this crazy idea isn't going to go anywhere unless we hire highly ambitious, highly motivated people. So if that's sort of 1 and 2, maybe those are 2 topics. And it should be people who, and not people who are looking to work a job, but are looking to build a legacy. Because I think when you're building a startup, you really want to build something that leaves a mark, right? And I know how, people starting out in work today, it's much more about having impact, and not only impact in the role you have, but on the larger scale. Obviously, HR might not be the sexiest business, but I do think Eliran and me and our company, maybe we're helping a little bit to solve unemployment, or we're helping people be happier in the long run because we're finding the right roles. So I think it's important that people have the opportunity and the motivation to take on ownership, because they're motivated and ambitious. And then would there be a third attribute? I think you said 3, right? Or am I just imagining that? I don't know. I think there's probably a whole level of other things, but at the end of the
motivation.
day. Sorry?
I said you said in motivation.
The test isn't the skill. I think it's. I think.
No, it's a beer test.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a bit delayed. Yeah, exactly. So I think those are a few skills that we for sure would look like. And at the end of the day, it's a high level of self-learning and motivation to understand what you are doing, how to standardize it, think about what is the most effective way to do it, and then make it efficient by either standardizing it and passing it on to the right people, or standardizing it and automating it. And I think those are just fundamental assets of every single person. They should make themselves obsolete within 3 months, ideally, and then move on to more exciting tasks.
Thanks. So just a short answer to my first question. How would you say the industry is moving forward? What skill set needed in the future of work? Just because our audience might want to learn insights on the industry in general.
Is that to me? Sorry. What skill sets? Yeah, I think it's going to be highly analytical. At least on the business side, I think we're talking to a business audience, so I'll focus on those candidates. It's highly analytical. I think it's a high motivation to let me think. To think in processes and then be able to implement those processes. And essentially, it's that self-starter. I'm not even sure that's the English word, but really be able to think through what is the next big thing that you want to have impact on the company. Be able to think how you could implement it, execute it yourself, and then build it in a way that somebody else can take it over, so that when it's done after you, it's in a way better position than when you started it. I think those are just, they're quite abstract. I'm not sure you can call those skills, but that I would say are super important aspects to what attributes you need.
Thanks. To make it short, in one word, how would you describe corporate culture, guys? One word.
Okay. I will think about it in one word. Sharing.
You're sharing?
Yeah. Thoughts, ideas, future actions, beer in the evening, everything.
Beer in the evening sounds good. Common pattern here. Manoj, do you want to give one word?
I'm not going to make any friends with this, but I'd say focus.
Focus.
I can explain, but you said one word.
Thank you. Manoj, you've already started talking about hierarchies and hierarchical structures. So when I was living in Israel, I always felt that the hierarchies are much more flat. You know, people trust more in your skill set and that you can manage somehow. I think that comes with the Israeli mindset. And I would like to ask Eliran about the hierarchies you are building up, maybe from where you started and where you are going to now. Did it change? How does your hierarchical structure look like?
So as you know, we started our startup, 2 people, me and my co-founder Leon. So, but now we have an R&D team that work with my co-founder Leon. He's our CTO, and on the other side, we have a marketing and sales team that works with me. But it is very important for us to practice team meetings, weekly team meetings, and to share our thoughts, and everyone can say anything without be afraid of the manager or something like this. So yeah, as you said, it's very flat, and I think it's important because in very hierarchical companies, people are afraid to say something. And if someone is afraid to say something, so maybe, you can lose an idea, a great opportunity. So this is how we work.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Manoj, how would you describe your hierarchical structure? Do you have clear, fixed structures, or as stated before, everybody can bring in fine tasks? How maybe has it also changed from when you started with the startup until now?
I mean, very simple. It's flat hierarchies, right? It's easy to say we're not a large company as well, but I think it's extremely important. We want to hire highly intelligent people, and I think with highly intelligent people, you don't really need to manage that much, ideally, right? Because it's about figuring out what is the objective, what is the vision, and with that, actually, you can probably solve a lot of things that management has to solve otherwise. So I would say that helps us, but I would say we're still a young company. So we are right now thinking about how we scale to the next level, to 50 to 100 people, maybe more. And that will be interesting how we navigate that. My personal view on that is I just want to be the dumbest in the room. So we want to hire just brilliant people who can take over a task, they can own it, whether they have experience or not, and they'll come up with a solution that is well thought through. It might not be the best solution, but from that basis, they'll be able to take it to the next level. And I think where intelligence is extremely important in that is to be able to justify why that next solution is better than the previous solution, and where the faults are. So we know what are the risks that we would be running if we try the next level. So when it comes to hierarchy, I think it doesn't matter again how much experience somebody has. I've had companies, I'm not sure in Germany people know it quite well. I was one of 4 managing directors at a company called Treatwell before the exit a few years ago. For about 40 million, we sold the company. And there was literally one intern, I won't say from which university, but a business university. And after coming on board, the whole company realized that person, people gravitated towards him in this case. And in that case, the gravitation was so strong that he was allowed to manage the client success team of 15 people after being 3 months in his internship. And everybody naturally accepted this role because he was had a gravitas when he came into the room. People listened. It was structured. People thought it made sense. It did make sense as well, which helped. And I think that's for me one of my learnings, and one of the things that I like having is a combination of high motivation coming from great schools, but also great experience from great companies. So I don't think it's about hierarchy. I think it's about or seniority. I think it's about the right people at the end of the day.
Yeah. Thanks for the insight. I always felt that in Germany there are a lot of people that are hierarchy. Maybe it's also some school education that don't really fit into that ecosystem, and hierarchy through being in the military for 4 years after school. You could have hierarchy, but people prefer to work in, let's call it balagan. That's the Hebrew word for creative chaos, and it's very interesting to see those two cultures working together. And I always thought it's very fruitful if both cooperate. On the one hand, structured way that I always see also in German startups, but then the Israeli, creative chaos, flat hierarchies. But it's very fruitful to see, Manoj, that your startup is going there into this direction, or tries to work on that way. We have about 5 minutes, and then we wanted to have the questions open for the audience. Thus, I would really like to encourage the audience to just post in your questions and we will discuss them. So it also means that we have to come to an end of our short debate, and therefore I would like to talk about the startup ecosystem in both countries, because this is something people who lived in Israel and lived in Germany always say it's pretty different. So what I would like to hear first from Manoj, how would you see the startup ecosystem in Germany and maybe also in Berlin? And how is the culture between founders? And
it's a difficult question. I mean, it has a lot of facets. How is the startup? So I can say quite simply, I think at the end of the day, I see myself as Swiss, like I mentioned, right? At Switzerland and Zurich, I'm sure some of you have been there, is a great place. It's lovely, it's beautiful, it has mountains and lakes and great companies, even tech companies. Google has one of their largest hubs outside the US in Zurich. So there's a lot of benefits about Switzerland. So why am I saying that is, nevertheless, we have our offices in Germany in the Kulturbrauerei, a really cool place in Berlin. Why do we do that? Is at the end of the day, I think when you're building a company in the German-speaking region with 100 million people, there is probably no better place than Berlin. And why Berlin? And I think that's a unique aspect to Berlin than a lot of other ecosystems. I don't know Israel so well, so I'm not going to compare. But if you think about the cost of living in San Francisco, if you think about cost of living in London, in Berlin, you can live on a shoestring. So what does that mean as an entrepreneur? And I know a lot of the audience will want to found a company. Maybe they work or they're part of Q-Summit, part of thinc in the Uni Mannheim, right? So if you want to found a company, you also need to think about your burn rate. And one of the reasons that Berlin is so strong in the German-speaking region is because you're able to find great people, multicultural city, the largest city in the German-speaking world, one of the largest in Europe. It's a cool place. There's a lot of change, right? I mean, not being German, it's easier to talk about what happened in the 40s and 50s, but after that, Germany went through a huge change, and Berlin is going through a massive gentrification. It's going through a massive influx of great people from outside, all over Europe, all over the world, coming into Berlin. So it's great to find talent. And I think that's one of the aspects that I love about Berlin, or Germany, and Berlin specifically. And potentially one interesting fact about Berlin is it is known for execution, what you were mentioning before, and it is or Germany, it is known for processes and structure. And I think that comes a lot from what Rocket Internet dictated over the last 10 years, because it's a lot of business study students who found in Germany, where I get jealous when I look at the cybersecurity and all of those topics, HR tech as well, apparently in Israel. So I think it's the change is also interesting there, because we're going much more into B2B. We're going much more into small and medium businesses in Berlin, and we're challenging also on a global scale. So I think that's interesting when it comes to Berlin, and that's why I believe it's in Europe, with Brexit and co happening in the UK, it could even become the pole position place to build a company in Western Europe. And that's why I like it, and a lot of the aspects that make it great.
It's good points that you're mentioning, in particular the B2B, that is, Germans are not very known for building great startups in that field. And one of the reasons, it works so well building the bridge between Israel and Germany is because companies from Germany are looking into the Israeli ecosystem and do have even R&D centers in Israel, besides scouting startups. And Eliran, last point to you. So tell me about the startup ecosystem, how you see it in Israel, and also, your take on that.
Okay, so I think in Israel we have a unique combination of a small country, a mentality without hierarchy, as you said, and maybe even some history, and that drives people to think about solution. You can find in Israel two people that are waiting to the bus, and why it takes so long? We have to think about something. Okay, so this is the mentality, and Jennifer, you are laughing. Maybe you heard something like this in Israel when you visited us. And even in the school, the teachers motivate us to think about some solutions. And I think when, all the technology comes to Israel, so it changed everything, because you can do a lot of things without really budget. And it's it's a great opportunity for people in a small country, to do what they believe in. So, yeah. So this is the Israeli startup ecosystem.
I think, yeah, I totally agree. I think it's super exciting. It's so different, but there's a lot of great things about both. I think maybe I just saw a few questions as well. I think one of the things that I realized as well, why Berlin is great compared to maybe other cities in Germany. As far as I know, it's like 60, maybe even 80% of all startups in Germany are founded in Berlin. So there's a huge ecosystem of helping founders, and I think it's also about that, right? I mean, in Berlin alone, there's probably north of 1,000 startups in Berlin, which is more than the whole of Austria, as an example, right? And I think when it comes to funding, Berlin, I think, is sort of after London, one of the biggest, and what brings, I think, Tel Aviv or Israel close to Berlin and London is one of the largest tech conferences. The NOAH is held in all three cities. By the way, it was planned to be held in Zurich as well this year, but that didn't happen due to COVID. So I think we have some exciting cities in this panel.
Yeah, I have to cut you off a little bit, Manoj, because we are soon going to have questions from the audience. Let me just give a last comment on that, because that's a misunderstanding. I mean, sure, Manoj, you can hold up Berlin, and I agree, it's a great city to live at. And Tel Aviv, probably the opposite, having a beach, having enormous expenses, and but still being also culturally very interesting. I do think that in Germany, you can't just say Berlin is the startup center, because you get step-by-step stronger regions in North Rhine-Westphalia, Bavaria, and Baden-Württemberg as well. And it always depends on which industry you are working on. And the hidden champions, the Mittelstand you are talking about, are usually in the south. So I would highly encourage people who want to found a startup to find the right ecosystem where it is suitable for them to found. But that's just a last comment on the comparison. And I would love to hear some questions from the audience. And maybe Anna or Leo, could you post? Okay, here, Marie Carrie. Oh my God, my pronunciation must be horrible. What do you think is the main difference in mentality between Israelis and German, with a significant impact on? And now the question is cut off for me. Would you be so kind and so we can see the end of the question?
I think it says on recruitment strategies.
Yes.
Okay, on recruitment strategies. Okay. Manoj, Eliran, one of you.
I think it's a question for you, not? You saw the difference.
For me?
No,
for
Jennifer.
Me?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, Jennifer, don't put
Okay,
it on
impact.
us.
The last thing was on the recruitment
strategy.
What do you think?
So I can speak from my experience. I got my first startup as a business developer just by I'm a German. So they told me, well, you must know how to get the right companies in Germany. And I was a bit overwhelmed first, but then I took it over. So what I wanted to say with this is the Israelis always believe that you have a potential, that you can do something. And you just have to work hard enough, and then you can achieve it. I think this is the mentality that drives the most for Israelis, why they are also so likely to found a startup. It's like, oh, we have a good idea. Let's just do it. We will figure it out during the way how to get there. But, well, let's just start. Whereas the Germans, and that's something Manoj said, are very analytical. They first think about all the struggles and all the challenges you have. And that's the same in the recruitment process, right? Or that can be reflected on that. Because they see your CV, they base you and evaluate you on where you studied and all these kind of things. And they don't really see first the potential and where you can grow to, but what you have, and then to see how you can be shaped in a way. I hope I don't make Germany too bad, but I just really felt that in Israel, the individual is seen stronger. So I hope that answers the question. What makes a valuable internship for you? How do you provide it? So we had Manoj was saying that there's no real internship. There are just people working in the company that, and probably you would be best to answer that question. And Eliran, maybe you can add on to what are you currently looking for if you are looking for German students as well. So Manoj, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I think what is a valuable internship? I mean, we don't hire people, like I said, as interns. It's just, I feel it's just on the contract, the way we work with, actually 2 Mannheimers are at the company right now. So search them on LinkedIn and write to them and ask them. Tom and Mario, by the way. So yeah, what is the valuable internship? I think it's, first of all, I mean, we need to make sure that there's projects and I think execution at the same time, because I think having the dream that it's only about amazing projects is potentially the wrong thing to think about, because you also need to get things on the ground and execute and get things done. So let's give a quick example of what one topic was that the Mannheim team actually worked on, is a topic of acquisition. So the project was, okay, we want to do 10x on acquisition. So that means, how do we, with extremely limited resources, get much better at what we're doing to get new clients? And for us, it was extremely impressive, because within the course of 3 months, we grew the, on paper, interns at the time grew the amount of clients we were bringing into the company by over 70% within a couple of months. So what was impressive for me was that it wasn't about the experience, it was more the ambition, the target, and the impact that they had. So it was extremely important for every internship that we have certain projects that drive the business, that have clear goals, and are focused on growth, because that's where everybody wants to work on when building a startup, because you need to grow, because you're always the David to the Goliath. And that's what we want to have in every internship, especially coming from business universities. At the same time, I think we never hire somebody for a specific period. My goal, ideally as a founder, is to hire somebody that I'd love to work with in the long run. Really, when the internship comes to an end, we're not talking about somebody going elsewhere, but maybe even staying on in the long run. And in both cases, it actually happens. So the internship would lengthen and even led to full-time positions.
Thank you, Manoj.
I would love to add something about interns. So in the past, when I was a student, I worked as student staff, and usually all the managers, are giving you all the jobs that they don't want. Okay. And I think it's not correct, because these days I'm I have some collaboration with the college in Israel, and when I spoke with the interns, I told them, you will do what I cannot do, okay? You will add me value. You will not do what I don't want to do, okay? I don't need someone to, just to make things that I don't need, and after, this period you will go. No, after this period you will get shares, and you will be part of our team. So this is the way that I see it.
Thank you, Eliran. So let's have our first. Then Anna and Max would like to ask a golden question, and I think that's it for now. So the last question we have for tonight is, how do you select one idea to go with when having a short list of 5 to 10 ideas? I mean, I would always go for a beer and then, no, I'm not doing that, but Eliran, do you want to start with answering the question?
If I have 5 ideas, how I should choose between them?
If you have a list of ideas, for instance, I can come up with an idea for a marketing plan, or which, platform to use first, and then how do you select one idea? I think that is kind of the question.
If I can give an advice to all the entrepreneurs and the students that are in the audience, don't try to solve other people's problem. Try to solve only your problem, because if you are suffering from this problem, so many other people are suffering as well. And maybe it's funny, but you will find it true when you will come to research and marketing. So this is my advice. If you have 10 ideas and only one solving your problem, do it.
Mm-hmm. That's a big picture. Maybe, Manoj, do you want also to have a big picture when you have 10 startup, or if you have a small problem to solve, how do you decide?
I agree with Eliran on one point for sure. I think you need to understand, on a lot of points, by the way, Eliran, not that I didn't agree with the others, but yeah, you for sure should understand it way better than others. I think when it comes to, if I understood correctly, choosing an idea to start a company, that's what I've understood now, right? So when
it can be in both directions.
Sorry?
I think question can be understood in both directions, as founding a startup or, working on a specific project. But go ahead with the big
I'll do the big picture first. I'll do the big picture first then. So my fundamental, and this is not a recommendation, you should definitely do this. If there's one thing you can choose your market wisely, because you have a limited amount of inputs. That's 24 hours. And depending on how ambitious and how much sleep or little sleep you need, you subtract 4 to 8 hours off that, maybe 10 hours. So you have, if you need a lot of sleep, you need 10 hours. You have 14 hours a day where you can attack that project or that topic. So if you choose the right market, you have the potential to build something big. If you choose the wrong market, you'll always be chasing, maybe you're chasing that unicorn or decacorn or whatever people call it these days, the zebra, but you will never be able to get there because the market will be split between competitors over the period of time. So choose it well. Choose it well based on whatever analysis you want to do, and do that really well at the beginning, because otherwise you're just really not going to make it. The second thing, how do we prioritize ideas internally, is we essentially let them compete against each other, against a certain metric, whether it's revenue, whether it's number of clients, whatever the main KPI we want to drive, we let it compete against each other. So if there are 10 ideas, we review it, we prioritize it, whether it's impact, whether it's the confidence, whether it's the effort, or whatever it is that we want to do. That's the ICE model, by the way. Whatever it is, we decide based on certain metrics which one is going to be the right idea to follow, and it has to have the biggest impact on whatever you want to impact. That's how we do it internally. Choose the right market is the bigger picture.
Maybe to sum up on that, I think lots of two very important aspects are brought up. In regards to market, there's a good insight about the beachhead. So it's not only about the biggest market, but a niche market from which you can grow into bigger markets. I think that is a good start of thinking about the startup. What is your strength? I think that's the first question to ask, or how you can build strength. And yeah, the ICE model is definitely a great thing, but there are different aspects to be considered, and it depends on the goal and the KPIs you set yourself.
So then we would come, first, thank you guys a lot that you took the time to give your experience to us students.
Thank you.
And we would ask the last question that we ask all the founders that we welcome in our streams. If you could give us one tip, one crucial tip for our own startup, which one would this be?
I just blew my ammunition. I was choosing the market.
Want to go ahead?
Like the golden rule.
Eliran, would you like to? I have one.
Okay, so I would love to give advice to all the people that are in the audience and you that you ask these questions. So do what you believe in, because you know, in all this process you will hear a lot of opinions, a lot of advisors, and finally it's your company, it's your dream, and this is your duty to decide. Don't search for other people that will decide, but hear a lot of opinion and decide yourself what you're going to do, and it will save you a lot of troubles and time.
Thank you very much, Eliran. So then, Manoj, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so choosing the market was taken now. I said that just now. I think when you asked what sums up our company before, I used the word focus, which makes me extremely popular without context. Now, what I think is extremely important when you're building is focus. And it's easier said than done, but what do I mean with it? There's 1,000 ideas all of us have. Right? We have chosen an idea, what we believe in, like Eliran said. And then it's about how you bring that to fruition. And there it's about focusing. And it's not only about the things you focus on, what you want to do, but even more importantly, what you don't want to do. So if you have 1,000 ideas every day and you're one person, there's no way you're going to do all of those 1,000 ideas. So you need to really select the ideas like we had in the last question and focus on that one most important thing. And that means not to focus on the 999 others. When you're 1,000 people, that's going to be great as a founder. Then I have 1,000 people who I can pass on these 1,000 ideas to, and they'll all get done. But at that point, we'll have 1,000 people with 1,000 ideas each, and we still need to focus. So focus on the things you really need to achieve, and focus or defocus, don't focus on everything else. That's really important whenever you're building a startup. Really do that.
Thank you, Manoj. Now, Jennifer, what's your golden rule for us?
Yes. It's something like, first of all, I would agree with Manoj and Eli. There's something more, and it's that you should surround yourself with the right ecosystem, because as an entrepreneur, you will always fail, you will always make mistakes, and you always have to constantly go up. You will get rejections, and you know, being an entrepreneur sounds cool, but it's also tough. And having the right ecosystem that believes in you and pushes you to the edge, and also refers your startup. This is something that can make you grow faster, quicker, and not give up. And that's just the last comment on that. And thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you really much. Big thank you to the three of you. We really enjoyed the talk, the panel discussions, and I think our audience did too. Thanks to all people that asked the questions in the chat. And yeah, I wish everyone have a great evening, and really, really thank you for taking that time for us.
Thank you. And
thanks a lot from our
Thank
side.
you.
Feel free to reach out. I think we've left
exactly,
something.
if you have further questions, you can just contact Eliran, Manoj, or myself directly, and we are happy to hear from you. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Sure. Don't be
Bye.
shy if you have any questions. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.